dictionary. It's better to get a consensus of all available sources and be sure to compare definitions in the appropriate context. According to every dictionary I have yet seen, it can be said that faith in the religious context is an unreasonable conviction, which is assumed without reason and defended against all reason. It is in all instances independent of evidence, an unsupported assumption asserted with unwarranted certainty.
In my video entitled Religious Faith, I quoted this source. Faith, trust, especially in the reliability of God. A modern misunderstanding of faith is that it is an inferior kind of knowledge or an acceptance of an opinion or story which cannot be wholly proved. The biblical meaning of faith, the corresponding verb is believe, is more in the nature of commitment, though it does also imply that there is a basis in fact which could, by virtue of conclusive historical evidence, render faith unsupportable. Now this is the Oxford Dictionary of the Bible here, not some apologetics book. Right away we should realize that AronRa is probably incorrect here. And I mean, he at least has not seen this definition. So what's really sad though is that every one of his definitions contradict his claim. You know, he claims that these definitions are in the religious context, and also that they're the only definitions that he's ever seen. But what's hilarious is that each one of these definitions, from the sources that he's taken it from, have a totally different definition specifically for the religious context. I don't know how he did not see this. Maybe he was just expecting us to take his word on faith. I don't know. But one interesting thing is the definition from Wikipedia. The quote he quotes from Wikipedia is no longer on Wikipedia, which is why using Wikipedia as a source is not really good practice. But the current version of Wikipedia under the section on Christian faith illustrates AronRa's mistake perfectly. In Christianity, faith causes a change as it seeks a greater understanding of God. Faith is not fideism or a simple obedience to a set of rules or statements. Before the Christian has faith, they must understand in whom and in what they have faith. Without understanding, there cannot be true faith, and that understanding is built on the foundation of the community of believers, the scriptures and traditions, and on the personal experience of the believer. In English translations of the New Testament, the word faith generally corresponds to the Greek noun pistis, or the Greek verb pistou, meaning to trust, to have confidence, faithfulness, to be reliable, to assure. Clearly, AronRa, knowingly or not, has been using a strawman of faith.
Things hoped for but not seen, looking at things that are not seen, not seeing what is seen, and this list ends with everybody's favorite combination of logical fallacies, the circular argument routing back to an assumed conclusion. Now that we are expected to see what is not there, not only that, but we are blessed if we make ourselves see what cannot be seen. This is not a reasonable request. These are not reasoned responses. We are encouraged to believe without reason. In fact, we are blessed if we believe the most outrageous, illogical, inconsistent, and contradictory claims without any evidence at all.
These verses are actually quite commonly cited by atheists, so I'm happy to address them. The answer is really quite simple, though. His argument is dependent upon the false assumption that not seen means without reason or evidence. For example, John 20 verse 29 is in the context of doubting Thomas, who had not believed the eyewitness testimony of Jesus being raised from the dead until he saw Jesus and touched him. In this context, obviously what Jesus was talking about was the lack of direct observation of him in his resurrected form. In other words, Jesus was saying that people should believe based upon eyewitness testimony in absence of the direct observation of him. This faith, in the sense that we trust the eyewitness testimony, but not in the sense of the lack of evidence, reason, or justification. This is not blind faith. And this is also the faith that we see in the dictionary. Romans 4, verse 17 is actually kind of hilarious, actually. The way AronRa is reading it is as if it must be as though we're supposed to believe that things which don't exist, but actually what they're talking about is God's creation of things which do not exist. Try reading a more modern translation of the verse if you don't believe me.
On this point, Pope Leo XIII said, "It will never be lawful to restrict inspiration merely to certain parts of the Holy Scriptures, or to grant that the sacred writer could have made a mistake. Nor may the opinion of those be tolerated who, in order to get out of these difficulties, do not hesitate to suppose that divine inspiration extends only to what touches faith and morals, on the false plea that the true meaning is sought for less in what God has said than the motive for which God has said it. They render in exact language, with infallible truth, all that God commanded and nothing else. Without that, God would not be the author of Scripture in its entirety." And again, this is a statement a little bit more subtle, that whether you believe it matters more than whether it is true. Amusingly, St. Augustine admitted, "I should not believe in the truth of the Gospels unless the authority of the Catholic Church obliged me to do so."
Where does the quote say that? So truth is infallible, therefore it matters more whether we believe it or whether it's true. You're not making any sense. If something is necessarily true, that does not mean it matters more what we believe than whether it's true or not. And this is amusing how. Do either of the quotes support having an unreasonable conviction assumed without reason, defended against all reason, independent of evidence? No, not at all. Your problem is that you are attacking a position before you have taken time to learn about it. Have you ever taken the time to learn why Augustine took this position? I will not try to lengthen this video here, but take the time to read the quote right here from Pope Leo XIII that just utterly destroys AronRa's arguments. These two authors in no way rejected reason, but celebrated it as an important part of religion. Let's go back to definition 3. Belief, the assent of the mind to truth of what is declared by another, resting solely and implicitly on his authority and veracity, reliance on testimony. I actually like this definition a lot. It's kind of funny that AronRa uses this as an example of an unreasonable conviction assumed without reason, defended against all reason, independent of evidence. If you actually took the time to think about it, the definition says nothing of the sort. And that's where AronRa's videos become so frustrating. There's nothing wrong with believing what people say on authority, such as teachers, scientists, theologians, philosophers, historians, etc. There's nothing wrong with accepting eyewitness testimony. A lot of people in similar positions to AronRa ask me to prove the existence of God. But the problem is that it has less to do with creating arguments for the existence of God, and it has more to do with the people asking the question. I feel like they're setting up themselves such that they cannot ever accept the existence of God. If you provide a philosophical argument, they will say they want physical evidence. If you provide physical evidence, they will just say a causal link between God and matter is a God did it argument. If you provide eyewitness testimonies, they will say eyewitness testimony is unreliable. And of course, they can always fall back on the claim that extraordinary evidence is required for this extraordinary claim. You can't argue the point with these people. The goalpost for them is 100% certainty or nothing. Apparently, I have 51% certainty that God exists, even though that means I believe God probably exists. It's not extraordinary enough, and I'm an agnostic. Apparently, hope means nothing because Using hope as a reason to follow religion is just deluding yourself. Apparently, intuition should be completely ignored. The reason I believe and the reason you don't has little to do with facts, has everything to do with the insurmountable standards you have for acceptance of belief in God.